Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Coming up on today's show, the UK and France agree a new migrant returns deal, but will it actually stop the boats? I'll be joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey with the latest. And British, not Nigerian, Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch is facing criticism once again on both sides of the Atlantic after distancing herself from Nigeria in a controversial podcast appearance. I'll be speaking to author and historian Dele Ogun about the backlash. Then later we unpack this week's biggest business headlines, including Trump's new 100% tariff plans, delays at Virgin Galactic and a public health warning in New York City. But first, Prince Harry has been cleared of bullying allegations by the UK Charity Commission after a bitter public fallout with the leadership of his co-founded charity, Centre Barley. The Commission found no evidence of systemic bullying or overreach by the Duke, who resigned from the board earlier this year alongside Prince Seeiso of Lesotho. However, the decision allows current chair Sophie Chattanooga and her board to remain in place, a move insiders say has left Harry emotionally devastated. The Duke's allies have criticised the lady for invoking the memory of Princess Diana in her post-ruling statement, calling it deeply inappropriate. Harry is said to believe the dispute has damaged the charity's mission to support children affected by HIV/AIDS in southern Africa. Despite the setback, the Duke has pledged to continue supporting the region through other means, calling Centre Barley's collapse a painful end to what he once described as his life's work. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has defended his plans to recognise a Palestinian state, but insists the move would not legitimise Hamas or reward terrorism. Starmer says the UK could formally recognise Palestine by September, provided Israel agrees to key conditions, including a ceasefire in Gaza, humanitarian access, and renewed talks towards a two-state solution. He described a sense of revulsion in Britain over the suffering in Gaza, saying the images of starvation and civilian loss are unimaginable. His remarks have sparked diplomatic backlash from Israel and drawn criticism from some British Jewish communities. A protest is expected in London this weekend, with demonstrators demanding the release of hostages before any formal recognition can take place. Starmer, however, remains firm. He said Hamas must play no part in Palestine's future and that recognition is not a concession to extremism, but a step toward long-term peace. Still, the move has opened a new fault line in UK foreign policy, balancing growing public pressure with humanitarian action and securing concerns about Britain's historic support for Israel. In other news, the UK and France have signed a new migration treaty, allowing Britain to return small boats' arrivals across the Channel, but critics warn the deal may be more symbolic than effective. Under the agreement, the UK can send asylum seekers back to France, but only if it accepts a matching number of applicants in return. The arrangement is being described as a reciprocal deal, with both sides given the power to approve or veto individual returns. However, the numbers are small. Just 50 migrants per week are expected to be exchanged, roughly 1 in every 17 people currently arriving by boat. And with more than 25,000 crossings recorded this year alone, critics argue it's unlikely to meaningfully deter people smugglers or reduce overall arrivals. The deal is due to expire next June and can be suspended or cancelled at short notice. The Home Office insists the plot will be supported by a robust legal framework, but ministers admit human rights appeals could delay or block returns. For more on how the policy will work in practice and what it means for UK border control, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. Simon, so on Thursday morning, the UK Prime Minister announced that the first set of migrants under this UK-France treaty have been detained. We're not sure if this is Rwanda deportation 2.0 under another name. Talk to me about the details.
Yeah, so I think what Sir Keir Starmer would say is that they are trying, unlike he would say the Conservatives, they are trying to do this in partnership with France and other European countries to try and have some kind of joined up approach to the migrant crisis. Obviously, their slogan is "Smash the gangs," whereas the previous government's was that they were going to stop it completely.
Stop the boats.
Stop the boats. And so Sir Keir Starmer has decided that the only way to do that is really to work with France, Emmanuel Macron, and Europe to try and get to the bottom of these gangs. But also, there needs to be an approach where you send migrants back to stop them coming over in the first place. That they see that. The critics are pointing out there's tiny numbers in comparison with those that are coming over. Only around 50 a week, apparently, could be sent back under this scheme.
Detained first.
And they need to be detained first. And 25,000 people have come over since the start of the year. So this is a drop in the ocean, even if they do end up sending 50 people back. They're also saying that there are some loopholes within the legislation itself, whereby migrants could stay. The whole problem, I think, is the the Human Rights Act, the European Human Rights Act, that the government is bound to be by unless we leave, really ties their hands. And I think the main problem that we're seeing in terms of public opinion is the hotels, and the fact that people are struggling here, wages are dropping, prices are rising, and yet illegal migrants are being put up in hotels. They are hamstrung by that, by the European Court of Human Rights and everything that we're bound by that. So I think that's one problem. I think another problem is just public opinion thinking that illegal migration and these small boats is a bigger problem statistically than it is. Now, it's a big problem, but it's only applies to about 3.9% of migration in total.
Yes.
This is not, if you want to get migration down, you want to get legal migration down, because it's such a tiny...
The headlines are sensational.
But I think people don't realise that, and I think that's the problem the government have, is it's such a hard thing to stop happening when you've got huge wars happening across the world and increasingly happening, and you don't have a huge border force, and neither does France. It's what can you do, right? And then you're bound by... So I think Sir Keir Starmer's in a difficult position here, especially when he comes out with slogans before the election of, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to tackle this problem. And actually it's only increased, but it's only been increasing for decades, right? This is not something that has gone up under Labour. It's been going up exponentially for the last few years. So I think it's a real problem for Labour, and it's something that I can't see them changing really. And unfortunately, I think public opinion is going to grow and grow, unless the economy somehow does a 360 and starts to work really well for Sir Keir.
Yes, you're right. I'm going to be speaking about Kemi Badenoch after the break. But this morning she did tweet about Uber drivers, Deliveroo drivers. That's been a big thing here in the UK recently in terms of the public, because apparently lots of these last mile logistic drivers are undocumented migrants. There have also been some protests in areas such as Essex, where there's been accusations that young children are being followed home by migrants who are living in these hotels. That's what the public are talking about. They're not talking about this UK-France treaty.
No, they're not. And I think the problem is that as the problem grows, you will get more stories, true or not, about that. And people
the Uber Deliveroo driver story.
Well, it is
pretty true.
Well, I think that is true. But then again, would you rather they weren't working and they weren't adding to society? And who's going to do those jobs, right? The only reason they're doing those jobs is because English people won't do those jobs. So I think these kind of examples and these protests outside hotels are only going to grow unless the root cause starts to go the other way. And then
development in the developing world.
Well, yeah, exactly. And how do you do that? Or unless the UK people's conditions start to improve, unless people's wages start to rise, unless conditions start to get better here. And these are two huge kind of like things that you can't just fix overnight, do you? So I think there's a big
We've not reached the ice.
No, I don't
far
think so.
Right extreme.
But I think there's quite a PR job for Sir Keir and the Labour Party to be doing, and I don't think they're doing it very well in terms of what are they actually getting done. We're not seeing, pictures of people being sent back. We're not seeing, seeing pictures of people being arrested, but we are seeing
a reduction in numbers.
Yeah, we are seeing pictures of big hotel, people sort of protesting outside hotels, and then people labelling them as racist. And I think the opinion around that will start to switch, if it hasn't already, in that actually we're just looking for fairness and for people who are legally living in this country.
Not two-tier policing.
Well, that is what they'll say. So I think it's a really, really tough problem for Sir Keir Starmer and Labour, and it's not one that the Conservatives did very well, and it's a long-term problem.
Still ahead on Channel's Business Global, Kemi Badenoch says she no longer identifies as Nigerian. Her comments have sparked outrage in Lagos and London. I'll be joined by Dele Ogun to unpack the reaction, and we break down the week's biggest business stories, from Trump's 100% chip tariffs to Virgin Galactic's delayed space mission. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. We start with the US, where Donald Trump has unveiled plans to impose a 100% tariff on semiconductors, with a special carve-out for companies like Apple, who have pledged to bring manufacturing back to American soil. Apple has just announced a new $100 billion investment in US operations, including expanded factories in Kentucky and a new supplier hub in Texas. Still, Trump's sweeping tariff agenda is rattling global markets, particularly in India and Vietnam, key nodes in Apple's supply chain. In space news, Virgin Galactic is delaying the first commercial flight of its Delta spaceplane to autumn 2026. The company also reported lower than expected revenues and said seat prices will rise above their previous $600,000 ticket. Shares jumped 8% in after-hours trading, but remained down 35% for the year. And finally, to New York City, where officials have confirmed 3 deaths linked to a growing Legionnaires outbreak in central Harlem. Health investigators have found Legionella bacteria in local coding towers and are now racing to pinpoint the exact source. Over 67 cases have been recorded, raising alarm bells over building safety and air quality in dense urban zones. Now to a story that is stirring headlines, not just in Nigeria, but here in the UK. British, not Nigerian, Conservative MP Kemi Badenoch is facing backlash after saying she no longer identifies as Nigerian and hasn't had a Nigerian passport in over 20 years. Speaking on a podcast, she said, "Home is where my family is." The comments have sparked outrage across social media, with critics accusing Badenoch of disowning her heritage. Others defend her right to identity however she chooses. To explore the historical and cultural layers behind this controversy, I sat down with lawyer, author and historian Dele Ogun. Dele Ogun, always a pleasure having you on Channel's Business Global. I suppose this is Chem Chat 2.0. I didn't think we'd be having it so soon after our discussion a couple of months ago, but the Conservative Party leader has hit the headlines again on both sides of the Atlantic. She says she's no longer Nigerian. What are your thoughts on these comments that have sparked controversy globally?
Well, it can't get any worse for Nigeria, can it? Let's face it, this is a very high-profile person in global politics. This is the shadow Prime Minister of Great Britain. And saying that she's no longer Nigerian and reinforcing it by saying, I haven't held a Nigerian passport for the last 4 years. She's walked away from Nigeria. So how much worse can it get? It's bad for the country. It's worse than what we had before. If you remember, the last time Nigeria was disparaged by a significant political leader in this country was David Cameron. Yeah. You remember the comment, fantastically corrupt. This is much worse because that one you can say that, oh, it's racism, he doesn't know what's going on. This is a home girl that's saying this. So you can't dismiss it on the basis that she doesn't know what she's talking about. You've got to look for another explanation. And is the explanation that what she says is totally untrue and unfair? I'm not sure we can say that. I know there's an emotional reaction amongst Nigerians to say, how dare she? But there are 2 levels. There's a level at which you recognize that if the country was on the mend, would she be saying that? If the country was on the up, however selfish you might say she is, would she be saying that? When you bear in mind that her background was that her father told her, there's nothing here for you in this country. Wow. That is Nigeria, when she was 16. And that's why she opted So when you choose like that, especially when it comes to politics, it's not like Saka playing for England instead of Nigeria.
Yes.
That's not an affair so much of the heart. It can be just off the head. But when it comes to politics, when you are forced to choose, and Nigeria did force her to choose, who are you going to play for? If there had been an opportunity for her to play at a significant level in the Nigerian political space, i.e. we ran our political system as we're supposed to, she would have had a platform and she would have been playing for us. Instead, she chose to play for England, play for Britain. And when you make that choice, it's not just a matter of the mouth, it's not just a matter of the head. You've got to show that it's a matter of the heart, because there will be political opponents looking at you very, very carefully to say, how sincere is your choice? So it's majorly embarrassing, especially when you consider efforts to try and attract foreign investments into the country. I mean, it's a big hit. It's a real body blow. Whatever tours and trade missions you go on, the one that will always ring loud in everybody's head is Kemi Badenoch, who say, I'm no longer a Nigerian.
Dele, I want you to talk to me about the political strategy behind this. A lot of our viewers may not be familiar with Kemi. They only may see what they read about her on blogs, but I'm familiar with her. I know you are. Parliament just behind me, I've sat at events that have been hosted or convened by Kemi that refer to Nigeria. She's been to Nigeria. She's taken her children to Nigeria. She is not unfamiliar with the country. Why is she doing this? Why does she keep disparaging Nigeria time and time again? What is the strategy behind it?
Well, it's important to bear in mind that, in fairness to her, she's not disparaging Nigerians.
Right.
She's disparaging Nigeria.
Okay.
And she's doing it in the context of having to demonstrate to her chosen people, because she had a choice. Many of us don't have a choice.
But so did Rishi. So did Sajid Javid, former Home Secretary.
Indeed.
Nadine Zahawi.
True. But in her case, she's in a position where she's vying for leadership of Britain. She's having to demonstrate.
Sadiq Khan is the London mayor. He was in Lagos last week. He wasn't disparaging India.
Yep, true. There are other ways of going about it. And so there's an element where it's a misjudgment on her part in terms of how she chooses to play her card. She's chosen the line of, and let's again be honest, that some of the stuff she's saying is what Nigerians are saying between themselves.
True.
Every conversation that we're having.
On WhatsApp or X.
On WhatsApp and X, any gathering of Nigerians, we are making those comments. And we're making it from the heart.
I think that's a fair point.
We're not anti our people. Where it's objective assessment to say, this thing is not working. And historically, people have not been listening. They've been blocking their ears. Now, she's shouting it from the rooftop only because of her platform and her profile. And people are saying, oh, you shouldn't be saying that to at that level, such that others can hear. Well, we've got to decide whether we're going to double down and say what she's saying is completely untrue, or we're going to acknowledge that there are issues there, and we've got to respond to it.
Very important question. As you said, there's been controversy, huge backlash online, offline. Some Nigerians have accused her of weaponizing negative stereotypes. Do you think this is part of a longer tradition in how Western politicians of African descent position themselves? Is Kemi an outlier, or is there precedent?
There's precedent. If you remember, Kwesi Kwarteng was also a member of the cabinet. He was Ghanaian. Did he come out
First
and
Black Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Indeed.
Didn't last very long.
Did he make any comments directly disparaging
Ghana?
No. No. However, there is precedent. There is a book that he wrote titled Ghosts of Empire. Anybody who reads that book, it's not Africa friendly, let's put it that way.
Okay.
It's a complete whitewash of colonialism. So there are different ways that they do it. She's gone a peculiar way, but there is precedent for that. And sometimes these climbers, these diaspora climbers, in their desperate effort to show that they belong and they can be trusted, often are the ones who kick the ladder down.
I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago following the death of General Muhammadu Buhari, who happened to die literally 5 minutes away from where we're sitting. No press coverage. Kemi Badenoch's comments, oh my goodness. Headlines on the Times and the Telegraph, all of the mainstream broadcast networks in the UK covered it. Neither for nor against. I suppose they were testing the temperature, apart from some opinions in The Guardian. Are you surprised at how they picked it up? Do you think basically this is going to backfire?
Not surprised if you're comparing it to Buhari's news. Buhari was not their politician. Buhari was not a major player in their political affairs. And so what she thinks about and what she has to say about Nigeria, given her platform. If she was a low-level MP, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't get that news coverage. But she is the shadow prime minister. Is very, very, and they are, the political opposition, are testing her loyalty.
Wow.
And this is not just the Labour Party. Bear in mind, it's a right wing of her Conservative Party. Now following Nigel Farage,
absolutely.
She's having to fight that wing.
Absolutely.
And that wing is the one that's looking at her most suspiciously to say, is what we have here a true Brit, or is it really a Nigerian in disguise?
Goodness
and she's being forced to say, I'm not a Nigerian.
Wow.
I'm committed, I'm loyal.
She's been forced to say it. Does she mean it? And also, we discussed this off air. Final question for you, Dele. Is there any coming back from this? A few of us defended her, not blindly, but we said, hey, you know, it's very nuanced if you grew up in England. I'm a maid in England, you know. I spent most of my time in Brighton. Things are difficult for me. Not every diaspora is cookie cluttered, but this is almost indefensible, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Nigerians have to bear this in mind. This is a tale of two Kemis. Remember the other Kemi? The other Kemi, Adeosun, I should say, who happens to be my junior sister. She was born in England.
Former Minister of Finance.
She was born in England,
yeah.
Lived all her life in England, and chose to play for Nigeria. And what did Nigeria do to her? They rubbished her name. They accused her of forgery, forging certificates, something that she would never do in a million years. And that's how Nigeria played her. The one who chose to play for Nigeria. And then you have the one who actually grew up in Nigeria. That was the contrast. The one who chose to play for Nigeria grew up in England.
Formative years.
Absolutely.
Formative years.
Grew up in England. Yeah. And could have played for England and chose to play for Nigeria.
Wow.
And Nigeria rubbished her. And the newspapers, etc., messed up her name. And the one who says, I'm distancing myself from Nigeria. Why are Nigerians so upset? Is because they applauded her so loudly on the way in. They were jubilating.
As we do.
As we do.
We did it with basketball, we did it with football.
And notwithstanding that she's playing for the opposition. And at the time when people were clapping and applauding her and almost declaring it as if it was something for Nigeria. I said, no, she's playing for the opposition. Is there a way back for Kemi? I believe there is. I believe that
she's not killed anybody.
Oh, well,
I said that in a WhatsApp group the other day. I nearly got my head bitten off, but it's true. It's not. It's redeemable, surely.
Well, it's
indefensible, but redeemable.
It's actually more than that, because as I read her, in her heart of hearts, she's actually a Yoruba nationalist. Her father was a Yoruba nationalist.
Well, sadly, that's all we've got time for on Channel's Business Global this week. But do please share your thoughts on today's stories, from the UK-France migration pact to Badenoch's identity crisis to those game-changing chip tariffs out of Washington. You can reach us on social media or by email, and I'll be back same time next week with more in-depth business and policy analysis from around the globe. From me, Juliana Olayinka, and the team here in Westminster. Goodbye.